Good morning or hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3. Welcome to episode 3 of the Female Knights Roundtable Series 2020. Today our theme is headspace and fighting. I'd like to welcome our 5 panel knights, our producer Vespa, and of course you, our audience. I'm Duchess Sir Leiden Ingen Faraday from the Kingdom of Lockhart, and I'm your host today. So we've gotten some excellent feedback on our previous 2 episodes and a lot of positive comments from people who really do see the value in this series. As with any SCA activity though, there are detractors. So if you're one of the people who thinks that female knights shouldn't have a roundtable because it's unnecessarily segregating ourselves, then I would really encourage you to reach out to the new or the younger female fighters in your local area and ask them what they think. I would absolutely bet that they love it because they're seeing their own experience represented and they're seeing that other people just like them have done the thing that they are passionate about doing. And we're doing this for them. So with that out of the way, let's get on with the show. So today we'll be answering a list of questions from fighters around the world on the theme headspace and fighting. Some of these will be answered by all of the knights in our panel and some will just be answered by a few. We're also taking questions through the live Facebook chat and our producer Vespa will feed those into us through our internal chat. We'll be able to get to a few of them, but not all of them. If we don't get to your question, keep an eye out on our Facebook page. We might post it there. And if we don't, then we will get to it in a later episode. But as per last week, one of us will go through and comment on your comments to let you know when we'll be answering it and how you can access it. So today we've gone through and grouped the questions into 4 main categories. So we have training headspace, tournament headspace, goal and path headspace, and headspace related to being a minority in a male-dominated sport. So with that, we'll get started. Each knight is going to introduce themselves. And Sir Mari, did you want to start?
Certainly. Hi, I'm Sir Mari Alexander. I am 52 years old. I was knighted in the West Kingdom, and then I moved to Lockhart about 4 years ago. My main weapons form is sword and board. I started the SCA in 1983, which was 37 years ago, but I didn't start fighting until 1991, which was 29 years ago. It took me 18 years to get knighted, which was 2009. So I've been a knight for almost 11 years now. My favorite thing about fighting is the dance of the fight, is playing in the swords and the manipulation of that and the camaraderie that comes from sword play.
Hi, I'm Sir Fatima Al Nikita. I was knighted in Glenavon. I am 38 and I have been fighting since 2000. So about 20 years now. And sorry if you can hear my son. What I enjoy about fighting is the dance too. I hate to steal that, but that's the truth of it. The play off of your opponent. So
I'm Kelvin Ratslayer. I'm from Artemisia. I'm 54 years old. I started in the SCA in 1989. I put on armor for the first time in 1990. I was knighted just this past August. So it took me 29 years before I got knighted. I mainly fight with sword and a strapped round, but I've recently picked up a spear and find it to be so much fun on the warfield. I can't pick out just one thing about fighting because just fighting brings me so much joy. There's not one thing I can separate out from the joy.
Hi, Gnome World. I'm Sir Briothan Durams. I'm 51. I was elevated in Trimaris. My main weapon styles are sword and shield, spear, love spear, right there with Kelvin. I've been in the SCA for 33 years. It took me 32 years to get elevated. I was elevated 2019. Gosh, what do I love about fighting? What isn't there to love about fighting, right? There's that challenge. There is the camaraderie, the expanse of the known world, always a new friend on the field to meet. Yeah, I could go on about an hour about what I love about fighting. So glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Rithkin. I was knighted in the Kingdom of Amtir by Duke Davin in 2003. I started fighting in about 1996, so it took me about 7 years to get knighted. I have been fighting since then. So that's a really long time, with a short break for having a baby and recovering from a C-section. I am primarily a sword and heater fighter, although I've been experimenting with some center mounted shields and bastard sword. And I guess I'm 46, I should tell you that too. And one thing I really love about fighting is just being in the moment and not having any insecurities and feeling strong and free.
Thanks for that. And so the first question we've got comes from Cheyenne Campo, and it's, what was the biggest hurdle you dealt with on your path?
Starting out, my biggest issue was staying healthy and well. I had a lot of injuries. My ankles were fairly shot from soccer, and the more I fought, the more I seemed to get hurt. So I kind of refocused on getting my body well. I started stretching, doing yoga, making sure I warmed up, looked for better technique and better armor. Once I got past the ankle and knee injuries, I had to come back from having a child, and that was a different set of problems, and I think we're planning on discussing that more next time. But there was also the disillusionment with the SCA, and losing my focus because it didn't always carry the dream like I wanted to. And I went back and revisited my goals and what made it great for me, and I found my love again. And so after a while it stuck, and here I am.
So my biggest hurdle was myself. I had a lot of self-doubt when I started fighting. I spent a lot of time in armor. I was one of the first people on the field, the last person off the field for so many years. And I got really good at being able to see the openings and landing the shots, but I didn't have any power. And I can't tell you how many times I heard people say, well, that landed, but there was no power on it. And it really started to discourage me. But I'm kind of lazy, so I didn't really spend the time I needed to improve my technique. And I really just wanted to have fun when I was out on the field. So I didn't really do a lot of PEL work. And when I did do PEL work, it felt like I was building bad habits instead of good habits. And I also felt a little silly doing PEL work. I didn't really think it was going to do any good. And every time I would start, I'd convince myself and say, this isn't going to help me anyways. I'm never going to be able to hit hard enough. So the other thing that I had a problem with is I would go to trainings and I would work with people, and they would talk about all the things that were going on in the fight. And I would need to look for this, and I need to watch for that. And honestly, every time I came off the field, I don't remember what happened in the fight. I couldn't tell you a single thing I did in the fight. I couldn't even tell you if I landed a killing blow. And so I really started to doubt myself as being a fighter, because if I couldn't see what was going on in the fight, how could I ever become a better fighter? So I got really frustrated, but I had so much love with fighting that I just kept fighting. And I pretty much felt, I'll never become a knight because I'm never going to get my power up. But I have a lot of great friends, including Sir Rithkin, who've really helped me through that and helped me realize that I can be a good fighter, and that, damn it, I did want to be a good fighter.
Biggest hurdle was probably the physicality. Male-dominated sport, bigger, endurance. I had to really build my endurance to be able to go and fight in a tournament and wait 3 hours for the end of the tournament and to get into those higher brackets. But that took a lot of physicality, a lot of time in the gym. I've done a lot of physical therapy to repair injuries from fighting. And so, training up the body to be able to do what we do. And originally, I think my first suit of armor was like 40 pounds, 45 pounds. It was ridiculous. And over the years, obviously, we've lightened up armor and whatnot. But it was really the physicality of it that I had to train my body to carry the weight of the armor, to last the endurance that I needed to get into the brackets and to even do pickups, on a 90-degree, 100-degree day. So yeah, definitely physicality.
Okay. And so next question, what sort of headspace issues have you faced, and what did you do to counter them?
Okay, so I don't want to be disingenuous here. I don't have all the answers. I have not mastered headspace. I still have headspace issues, and the mental component of the fight is something that I think I will struggle with maybe forever. But when Leodin introduced this, we chopped headspace issues into 4 categories: training, tournament, goal, and being a minority in a male dominated sport. And honestly, I've had headspace and mental issues with all of those. And the way that I have overcome them is I've learned to get out of my own way. I focus on the process and the execution of the fight. I find if I don't dwell on what I think the outcome should be or the end goal, I always fight better, and I'm always in a better mood. I don't take on other people's issues as my own. If people have a problem with me as a woman, or that a woman beat them, that's their problem. It's not mine. And I've learned to focus on the joy. And the big thing for me is I ask myself the question anytime I'm having doubt: would I still do this if I never won crown? Because that's my big goal. And the answer is yes. I'm enjoying the process. This is how I want to spend my free time, and fighting is my joy.
For me, the biggest headspace problem I was having was tourney choke, because I could go out and fight for fun and have a great time, and I didn't keep track of wins and losses. So I would go out, I was getting better and better and winning more and more fights. But when I would go into a tournament, there were multiple pressures, a lot of which I put on myself. And I could not get out of my own way. And people would say that to me, and I had to say, okay, how do I do that? Because that was a kind of a vague comment of, well, you need to get out of your own way. You have all the chops, you know how to throw, you know how to do all the fighting stuff, but you need to be able to get through the tournaments. And I was going out in second, third, fourth round, be very, very frustrated. So one of the things we're going to circle back around to, that Rifkin, who, you know, as you can tell, coaches a lot of us, had brought up to me, was the gold medal mental workout for sports. And it's almost like a self-hypnosis thing, which we'll circle back around to. That part I had problems with too, but that'll come up in a later question. But I started using that to get out of my own way. And what I realized is that a lot of my tourney choke was actually stage fright, because, you know, I'm out fighting, I'm in my little fight bubble, and I don't think about everybody else that's on the field watching on the sidelines and all of that. I'm aware of my consort, I'm aware of the honor to my knight, but I was not looking for Joe Blow, Sir Joe Blow, Duke Joe Blow watching me on the field. And they would come up afterwards and say, oh, I saw your fight. And I'm thinking, why are you watching me? Stop that. And so when I would get on the field, I was aware of them watching me. And so it would actually cause me to falter. So I had to get past that.
Starting out, I also had stage fright, but she covered that really well. So I'm going to talk about, I had trouble with killer instinct. I loved fighting, but I didn't necessarily going after my opponent to kill them. And it took me a little bit to realize that was what was holding me back on the field, holding back my progression. People didn't take me seriously because I was not having the wins. And I guess in the tournaments, I wasn't progressing as far. And once I realized that was a problem, and I had a talk with a knight, and he advised me that when I am not going out there with my killer instinct and I'm not giving my all to my opponent, that I'm disrespecting them in that sense. And so that flipped my mind on the subject, and I started pursuing them with more aggression. It's still hard though. It's very difficult not to fall back into old habits and want to lay back and just enjoy the fight, as opposed to wanting to leave your opponent on the ground and walk off the field.
All right. Question 4 comes from Gina Kitts from Artemisia and Carol Ann Smock Augusta from the Middle Kingdom. And so they ask, what are some of the tricks and techniques you use to get in the zone and for getting out of your own head mentally and emotionally, so you don't let your self-talk or emotions throw yourself off your game?
So what I actually do is I like to walk around before my big tournaments and I talk to all the fighters that are around there. I wish them good fighting. I joke with them because I want to make sure I keep in my head that this is all about the fun and the joy of the fight. Win or lose, as long as the fight is a good fight, it doesn't matter. And what that does for me is it takes me out of my own head, because if I let myself think, I will think about all the things I should be doing, and then I'll get out on the field and I won't do a single thing correctly. I still struggle with that. I'm working on it. And one of the other things I do, and I just saw a thing recently, a lot of people don't like to be hugged, but I hug my opponents as long as I know them and they're comfortable with it. For me, that's what grounds me and gets me ready for the fight, because I want to have fun with my friends.
So I'm gonna break that apart as it was read, and the first part of that is what are some of the tricks to get in the zone, specifically for tourney. You get called, right? You enter the tournament and you get called and you get butterflies and you're nervous and you get the nerves really bad. And I want to tell you guys that that's actually really good stuff. You've gone to fighter practice, you've scheduled your events, you cleaned your armor, you're ready for that tournament. And so you get those butterflies and you get that the sweats and you're super nervous. And that is actually your body gearing you for the fight. You're being flooded with fight chemicals. And so you should take those chemicals and go, yeah, all right, body, we're ready to go. As soon as they call you and say, prepare to fight such and such, take a good look at your opponent. Get a game plan. Don't just walk onto the field cold. Get a game plan about how you're going to address that fight. Maybe identify some scuffs on their armor. Is there scuffs on their helm on one side or the other? Duct tape smears, maybe they can use that to your advantage. So, part of getting into the zone for me is addressing what's going on with my opponent that I've been called to fight. Part of that is preliminary for weeks in advance. I know I'm going to fight in Lions tourney, and I have an idea of who's going to be in that tourney. We tend to fight the same people over and over again. And so I will gear myself mentally in preparation. So use that nervousness and understand it, because I promise you, as you get down the road and you're fighting, some of those nerves are going to go away. You're not going to have those heavy nerves as you progress in your fighting years to come. So get a game plan and address your nervousness. Take a deep breath and go have fun and fight the best fight that you're capable of fighting. The second part of that is how do you get out of your own headspace? We tend to be our own worst enemy when it comes to headspace. And sometimes we allow other people to get into our headspace and bring great and heavy doubt to us. So if you know that you have issues with your headspace or with your emotions, that's something that I strongly suggest that you address with yourself before you even get to the event. Maybe you're driving down the road to the event and you're like, man, I just can't do this. I'm not strong enough. I don't hit hard enough. I've never won. I'm not going to win. Immediately when you hear those negatives coming, you've got to frame that up for yourself and say, nope, I've trained. I'm ready. I want this. And have that confidence, even if it feels fake. Keep building that confidence for yourself, because when you step on the field, it's your moment to let all of those things you've been working on come together. And you don't have time for self-doubt. You didn't have self-doubt when you were in the gym lifting weights. So it's really, I think, part of a reprogramming process for yourself. Not easy. You need to practice it, but it is possible.
So I am going to focus on tournament as well. One thing I did for myself is I named my negative self-talk after my rest in peace deceased grandmother, Dottie. So anytime I talk negative to myself, I tell Dottie to shut it. So that works for me. But what calms me is feeling prepared. So I'm a really hard worker. I'm a hard worker. I do pel work every day. I do my cardio. I like to feel prepared, because if I feel prepared, then there isn't any reason I can't succeed. And then Mari mentioned the gold medal mental workout for combat sports. Through that, I've learned how to relax through breathing techniques. And I use that a lot. And I also use sort of physical or word triggers to get my head in the zone. Like I'll clench my fist and say execute. And that's the trigger to me that the fight is on and I'm not thinking about anything else. I like to fight pickups between rounds. It stops me from obsessing about who's my next fight, how's it going to go, what kind of weapons. I just fight and relax and I find my joy. And then I focus on the execution of every fight and not on the end result. Because I find anytime I've done really well in attorney, it's always been me focusing on executing the fight in front of me and forgetting about the result. And all of a sudden, I'm the third person left in a 100-person list. So preparation, focus on execution, fight pickups between rounds, and have triggers to put you into the zone.
We do have a question from one of the viewers. So ladies, if anybody would like to answer this, please just give me a little wave so I can spotlight you for everybody watching. The question is, have you observed that many descriptions of completed fights have a large amount of imagination in the descriptions? Any takers?
Since you're highlighting me, I will answer.
Okay.
Sorry.
There we go. Yeah.
Honestly, I think as you progress as a fighter, you're going to understand the fight more. I know that when I was a newer fighter, people would, come out of the fight and they would do this blow by blow by blow. And I'm like, I would look at them and I'd be like, are you kidding me? The fight's going on. I'm fighting. I'm not cataloging everything you did and I did. But I think as you become more comfortable in the fight, you do remember some of that stuff. But I find when I fight best, my fights are sort of reactionary and I know what I did and I triggered off of something and then they're just done. So I can't always tell you what the other person did. I think people that are taking all the time to catalog the fight are missing their opportunity to be a reactionary fighter, is my opinion.
All right, I'm going to open it up to anybody else that would like to answer before I hand it back to our lovely hostess. All right, we are going back to our hostess.
Thanks, Vespa. All right, next question comes from Carol Ann Smock again and Baroness Starr. So the mental aspect of this sport is something I struggle with. I have a hard time embracing my value as a fighter and overcoming imposter syndrome. Did you have similar issues and how do you manage or overcome those feelings?
So when I started, my litter mates, the people that I fought with and I came in with and we're all in carpet armor together and all started together, they all go by Duke these days. Most of them have minimum of Sir, and I had Duke Alden and Duke Havek and Count Ragnar, and the list goes on and on. I thought I was the stupid sister. I really did, because they were very supportive of me. They fought with me. They knew all the tricks. They did all the things. And I wasn't winning the tournaments they were winning. I wasn't progressing the way they progressed. They would go out and be gods on the war field. And, I was good. I was a great support, lots of good assists on those kills. But I was not the goddess that they were portraying on the field. So that part of it made me feel like, okay, what am I even doing here? Clearly I'm not getting this because they're amazing and they're the ones I came up with. I should be amazing. So a part of that was learning how to get out of my own way. And we talked about the gold medal mental workout. And a part of what that does is it puts you in a good headspace. It lets you assess yourself very accurately and not to take the good and the bad and overinflate either one. So with that, there was a little bit of embarrassment in that if I was a good fighter, I wouldn't need to do this. If I was a good fighter, I wouldn't need to go to this many practices. If I was a good fighter, I wouldn't have to do all this Pell work. And those were the things, of course, that make you a good fighter. And you find out as you start talking to a lot of these folks that a lot of our path is done in private. I do Pell work by myself. I do sparring with 2 or 3 other people, but I'm not seeing what these gods have done. My knight, Havek, he was going to fighter practice 4 nights a week when he first started because he was poor and fighter practice was free. But he was knighted in a year and a half. He was prince in 6 months. He was king in 2 years. So that was the timeline that I was trying to hold myself to, and that's impossible. For me, it was impossible. So I had to fight that imposter syndrome of not feeling I was good enough. Now, along the way of him becoming a knight and a duke, I became a laurel and a pelican and a duchess and a viscountess and a nurse with a bachelor's degree. So my focus was in multiple places, and I was not just the fighter. So that is part of how I overcame that and became critically assessed of what my skill on the field actually was, what my strengths actually were, versus coming off the field and telling myself, this is terrible. I'm never going to fight again. I'm going to throw my armor in the river. I'm done. And to actually be able to go, no, this brings me joy. This brings me love. These are the parts that don't, and I need to overcome those.
Well, to be honest, I still suffer from imposter syndrome, probably now worse than ever since I've been knighted, and that'll be 2 years in August. But how I have dealt with it over the years is when I was a relatively new fighter, it was just, I am here, I am fighting, therefore I'm a fighter. And as my skill progressed, I would let the words of my friends and fellow fighters help carry me through and argue against that voice. You know, they would confirm how I felt, that my shots were good, that my fighting was good, and they would support the positive voice in my head and help quiet the negative one. And since I've become a peer, there's a popular phrase in my kingdom and maybe others, but peerage is not given, it's recognized. And if I was elevated, that means that they recognize the peer in me and a knight fighter in me. So it helps in those dark times when I'm standing on the side of the field, about to go out and face my opponent, and I'm questioning, why am I here? Why am I wearing this white belt? To remember the words of my friends, and to remember my past deeds and the hope that's close, and just repeat them to myself, and then take the field and let everything else go.
I think a good tip that helps sort of newer fighters as well is learn how to accept a compliment. So if someone says, hey, those snaps were looking really sharp today, don't go, no, I did terrible. Just take it for what it's meant to be, which is a recognition that you're doing well at that thing. So if you can learn to take the compliment as genuine, it might just help your path a little bit more, because you might get all those nice little compliments or feel good moments as you go, rather than always pushing away and saying, no, I don't deserve that, because you probably do. As a few people have said now, we are our own worst critics. So next question, again comes from Baroness Dub, and it's, how do you manage or overcome fears that you might never reach your goals, no matter how long or how hard you work?
Wow, that's a really long description of how I overcome it, because I've had so many ups and downs in all the years I've played in the SCA. I'm not sure I've ever really managed to overcome the fears. It's more of a realization of what my goal really is. Is my goal to be a knight, or is my goal to be the best fighter I can be with the amount of time and energy I'm willing to put into that goal? So like I mentioned earlier, I never really did any true training. I just went to a lot of events, and I traveled all over the place. I was fortunate enough to be able to travel into Ontario all the time. I had people over in Ontario think I actually lived in Ontario. I was there so much, but I never really progressed because I didn't do any actually additional training outside of just going and fighting at events. So I got a little frustrated because I didn't progress. And everybody around me who I started with, like Mari said, a lot of them They all became knights. Many of them became dukes. And I just got really frustrated. And I even got a little bitter. There were times when I saw people get knighted and I'm like, well, I actually fight a lot more than that person does. I'm a lot more visible than that person is. But then I really didn't put fighting as my priority. I had so many other things that took precedence. Mari talked about all the things she accomplished. I became a Pelican. I actually worked on my master's degree. For a while, I took time off and I played women's professional football. So how much did I really put into my fighting? And then one day I realized I'm not getting any younger. And then I had a pulmonary embolism. And that took me off the field completely. And when I had that embolism, there was some concern that I might never, ever be able to put armor back on because I might be on anticoagulants for the rest of my life. And during that time, I realized that I really loved fighting and I wanted to be a better fighter. And also during that time, I was fortunate enough to have total knee replacements because I've had bad knees my entire time I've been fighting. So I had both my knees replaced. I'm coming off of this pulmonary embolism and I decided I wanted it. I wanted to get better, but I've never been much of a goal setter. So it was kind of a struggle at first, but Sir Rithkin, who we've met, a couple of us have mentioned, she inspired me. She had done this blog or her daily routine workouts of her Pel work and everything she did. So I decided to start my own blog and I had 10 women that inspired me on that blog. And I, every day or almost every day, I would post what I had done that day. And I found I went over 800 days where I did work or some sort of slow work every single one of those days. It was amazing what the result was. I would pick up my sword in my armor and I wouldn't even feel my sword. It was just an extension of my arm and no longer was this foreign object that I had to figure out how to use. So now I could start concentrating on the footwork and the other parts of the fight that I never really could because I was so worried about trying to hit hard enough so somebody would take my shot. So it was really that. And then I did the Shiv hunt. I don't know if many of you have heard of the Shiv hunt, but Anton and Will started it. You go and you fight at least 50 knights and get their signatures. Well, I did that and I went all over the known world and I got signatures from all over the place. I had them write comments in my books and I noticed that a lot of the comments were similar and there was a lot of positive in those comments of the things that I was doing right. And it actually gave me the confidence I needed to step out on the field and be the fighter I wanted to be. And that's all that I was looking for. I just wanted to feel like a fighter. And it was great. And I was totally blown away when I got offered knighthood when they put me on vigil because I really expected it to be years longer. But I really finally really understood what it meant to go out on the field and fight like a knight. So it was great.
So as I said earlier, I've been in the society for 33 years. It took me 32 years to be elevated to the chivalry. My original background is kendo. And, you know, in any martial art, which is what we do, you walk into a dojo and you put a white belt on, and one day, 10 years later, 6 years later, how many classes or how much money you put into it, you put that black belt on. And so with the society, I came to the society with that same approach. But, you know, we don't have that kind of structure, right? We are evaluated, weighed and measured by our peers. And so over the 32 years, there were some really dark moments where I didn't know if I wanted to continue this path. I thought about going into other martial arts, eskrima being one of them. And what kept drawing me back to the society and the path of chivalry was the camaraderie. And the fact that this particular sport is by far the most challenging sword play that I've ever been involved in. And I've pretty much sampled every sword play that I could find in a school environment. And so, you know, some people ask me why, why 32 years? Why did you stay? Why did you? Well, I love it. I love the people. I love the fighting. I love the pomp, the circumstance. And I love how we prosper people. I can't think of any individual that has picked up heavy weapons and has not been prospered by it. But talking about fear, fear of your dreams never coming to fruition. Fear is a killer. It will kill all of your dreams and all of your hopes. And anytime I feel fear, my engine revs. I'm like, oh, nope, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to allow myself to be fearful. And I'm going to face that. And so there were a lot of times when I would sit myself down and talk to myself about my journey. And like I said, what it boiled back to was love, passion, camaraderie. But again, anybody that chooses to step on the path of chivalry is going to face adversity. You're going to be tested. You're going to be tried. Some people are not going to say nice things about you. Not everybody is going to want to be your friend. Okay. And it really is up to you about the brand of ownership that you want for your path. And it takes a great deal of strength to overcome your own fears. And then, of course, like my sisters have already said, there's this great support system too. Lean on those friends. Lean on the ones that are in your corner and who are training you and giving you the good advice and helping you to move down the path. None of us walk this path alone. And so I guess to finish up on that, knighthood wasn't a goal for me, but there were little goals in between, okay, to keep me focused, to keep that fear at bay. And it was, okay, I want to go win my little local Shire tournament. And so that took me a minute, but I won it. And then I want to fight in Crown, or I want to win this tournament, or I want to go train with this set of trainers in another state or another kingdom. And so these little goals that I would set for myself really kind of kept me on track. And I just, picked away at it year after year after year after year. And a lot of what I do in the society is for pure love, just to give back because of how much it's given to me. And so you're gonna experience fear on the path to chivalry. You're gonna experience doubt. You're gonna experience tears and injuries. But I asked a Duke once, I said, is it worth it? Is all of this, what I'm doing, worth it? And he said, Bree, he says, it's always worth it when you aspire to a goal and then it comes to fruition. So don't stop. And I would say that to any of you out there that have higher aspirations, don't stop. Check your fear, check your self-doubt, reach out to the sister chivalry if that's something you need to do. Reach for your friends and keep your feet firmly planted on the path and keep moving forward.
Excellent advice there. Thank you for that. All right, so the next question, and this comes from Kathy Jones. Do you deal with the thought process that as a woman, you have to train harder and or longer than men, and you still may not obtain the same caliber as top male fighters? If so, how do you deal with those type of thoughts?
So there's a couple parts to that. I do not accept that I cannot reach the same caliber as a top male fighter. I don't accept that. I do accept that I have to work harder. Something that some people say to me every once in a while is they'll say, hey, Rithkin, if I worked as hard as you, I would have won a crown by now. And they mean it as a compliment, but I hear it as, look, you work so hard and you're still not good. And that hurts a little bit, but I don't own that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm working hard. I'm working harder than you. And eventually it's going to pay off for me. So part of dealing with it is life isn't fair. And my mom used to always say, compare and despair. And so if you stop comparing your path to anyone else's, it's a lot easier to just enjoy yourself and reach your goals. So I would suggest not comparing and despairing, believing in yourself. If you don't believe that you can do it, you probably won't do it. Your brain is such a powerful muscle, I guess. Is it a muscle? Okay, it's powerful. And if you believe it, you can achieve it. And I 100% believe that. I have not met my goals yet, but I'm a competitive fighter. And you know, if what you want is worth the work to you, then put in the work and believe in yourself. That's how I deal with it.
I come from the West Kingdom, and in the West Kingdom, we have the highest rate of females that have been knighted. So I never felt discriminated against because I was a female on the mental path of that. On the physical path of that, you know, we come from a kingdom, well, we come from a society where our guys that are 6'3" and 220 are extra medium. They're not even our big guys. So, you know, knowing that I was one of the smaller fighters, I was willing to put in that extra work. I've always been strong. I've done weightlifting since I was 15. So being strong wasn't an issue. Learning the techniques and being able to fight, you know, Duke Sean and I joke that people will come up to us now and go, oh yeah, but you know, you have natural talent. So that's why you do so well. And we laugh because as phenomenal as he is, you know, even he gets to look at it and go, natural talent. No, I have natural pel work and I have natural go out and work my ass off. So that was something that I had to kind of come to terms with and to realize how much work I wanted to put in order to succeed and what was my reward for that. And there were plenty of times that I went, life is busy. I don't have the time for this now. And then the joy of it would always bring me back in. So I didn't feel that my lack of progress was because I was female. I felt more that it was because I needed to put in more time personally. And for me to achieve those same goals, I was going to need to put in more work. And one of the things that fighting has taught me was how to learn. And to learn that if somebody tells you, you need to move more to the left, and your immediate thought is, I am moving to the left. Well, if they had to say it, then clearly it wasn't true. So you need to go more to the left. So I had to be able to put that ego aside and learn how to learn and be able to follow my instructors and understand whose opinion I actually was trying to, expectations I was trying to meet, and whose expectations were worthy of my effort to meet. And ultimately, my expectations are the ones that are worthy to meet. So as a female, it was just a thing. And in coming up, I had Sir Bren and Sir Elena, all of us were unbelts coming up in the West Kingdom together. And that was actually a good camaraderie and a good marker between the three of us. And we realized early on that there are plenty of white belts and lots of chains, and it wasn't a matter of only one of us could get it. So we competed on a friendly basis, but there was never a Queen of the Mountain, you're the only one that can get this attitude with us. It was, okay, what are you going through? Let's work on this. And ultimately, a lot of the things that we went through were the same things that our brethren were going through. So we all helped each other. So that's, hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, that answered the question really well. All right, this question comes from Adelaide in Palantir. How did you combat the good for a girl mentality that seems to follow female fighters? And how did you deal with feeling undeserving of praise or recognition if that was something you struggled with?
I'm going to answer this like it's two different questions. So the first, how do you combat the good for the girl mentality? I think I've been fighting about 5 years the first time that was said to me, and it really registered. And I remember turning to my partner at the time and going, I don't want to be good for a girl. I want to be good for a fighter. And how do you even categorize good for a girl as opposed to good for a fighter? And he asked me, well, I think you can do it, but what do you want to do about it? So I doubled my training. I made sure I showed up. I was out there and in my armor as often as I could be. And over time, I started hearing less and less the good for the girl, and just you're a good fighter. And once that sunk in a little bit, I kind of had to just also let it go and quit focusing on the girl aspect of it myself. I'm a fighter. I showed up as a fighter. I left as a fighter. And the more you realize that about yourself, I think the more people interact with you that way. Now, the accepting praise and recognition, I don't think this is a fighter issue. I think this is a human issue. And it is very difficult for many people to accept praise on any level. And sometimes the best way to do it is to stair step it. You can't believe that you're a great fighter, then you can at least believe that you showed up today and you fought. And maybe in a month from now, you can believe that, hey, I'm a good fighter and I did some good shots today. Maybe in a year from now, you can say, hey, I'm a pretty good fighter. I walked off the field with more wins than losses today. And one day, I'm still working on it. Maybe you can look at yourself and say, I'm a great fighter. And you just coach yourself through the process as opposed to trying to accept something that may be beyond your current belief system.
So I kind of have a little bit of a different experience. I never had anybody tell me I was good for a girl. I always put that in my own head. Anytime somebody would give me a compliment, I would finish that compliment off in my head with for a girl. I really had a lot of great support in my kingdom. I probably too much support in some ways. I never lacked in people helping me and people telling me I did a good job, but I just never felt confident that they were really telling me the truth because most of them had been my friends for a while. We all hung out together. So I lacked the confidence in what they were saying. And something changed. I had somebody new moved into the kingdom. Sir Gabriel moved from the Outlands into Artemisia. And we started traveling to events everywhere. And we would be in the car for 8 to 10 hours at a time. And we would talk fighting the whole time. And he would tell me that I fought really good that day or that I fought really shitty that day. So I really trusted what he said. And it really gave me the confidence to trust somebody that they weren't just telling me I was good for a girl, but because he was the same with everybody, regardless of the gender. And so I think one of the things, the most important thing you can do is find that person that you trust and hope that they are telling you the straight truth about how your fighting is. Because everybody needs to know when they have a bad day and everybody needs to know when they have a good day.
So the next question is, do you still feel the same about knighthood as you did at the time of your elevation? Why or why not?
I do. My elevation was a long time coming, and when it arrived, there was such happiness and joy with the understanding that there's that responsibility, right? It's not all accolades and pretty chains. Yeah, there's that wonderful responsibility to prosper your future and to be there when the folks in our society need us, and sometimes to be there when they don't even know that they need us yet. So knighthood is a very special thing. We all know that. And I think that if you look at it in a mundane perspective, if I was a sensei of a dojo, that too is a very special thing. We not only tend to work within our society, but we also tend to work within our community. So, I didn't really know what was on the other side of the elevation. Would people speak to me differently? Would the chain be very heavy? Would the belt be very heavy? Would I get all squirrely in my head and become a jerk? I didn't really know what to expect on the other side. And, now that I am on the other side, part of it is a little nostalgia because of things that I went through, right? My squire brothers and sisters, my higher merit orders brothers and sisters, all those things are gone now. Those are things that I passed through. And, I would stress to anybody, enjoy those moments. Enjoy the moments that you're a squire or a man at arms or an up and coming fighter. Enjoy those things, because once you become elevated, your world changes. You change into something a little bit different. Same person, different responsibilities perhaps. And enjoy all of the journey. And so right now I'm in the process of focusing and enjoying this part of my journey, and trying to be the best I can be.
Okay, so this is actually kind of a hard question for me to answer. I do not feel the same way about knighthood as I did when I was knighted, and that could just be because I was knighted in 2003, and it's been 16, almost 17 years. And your perspective changes. I think one of the most important things to keep in mind on your path, if your path is to be a knight, is that the belt does not define you, you define the belt. And I think that is so important, because not all knights are going to live up to your expectations of what you think a knight should be. You can only be the best you. And I have really high standards of the job part of knighthood, and not everybody has my standards, and that's okay. I can't force my standards on other people. And it took me a while to come to terms with that. If I'm being honest, there were some Knights Councils where I left in tears. So I think understanding that you make your own definition of knighthood and you become the knight that you want to be, and you can't make anyone else be who you want to be or who you think a knight should be, is kind of where I'm at now. For me, I am constantly striving to be worthy of my belt. Every day I am constantly striving. Not just prowess, but being a good person, being a good mentor, sharing knowledge, all of it. So I guess I'll end there, but that's kind of my perspective after being a knight for almost 2 decades.
Next question. How do you deal with the pressure of other people's expectations of you, i.e. the one true hope mentality?
So as I said before, I was Havek's squire, but I was the kingdom's fighter. So I had lots of people that would come up and tell me how to fight and tell me how great I was and blow smoke. And I'd come off the field thinking, oh man, that was a terrible fight. I should have stepped, I didn't engage, I stood back, I didn't, whatever I was beating myself up with that day. And they would come up and go, oh, that was amazing. And you did this thing and you did that thing. And I'd have to go, yeah, okay, thanks. God, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And then when I would enter into a list, and they'd be like, oh, you're going to win this one today. Yep, Queen Mari by your own hand. And I go, yeah, that's not happening. And so I had to learn that expectation was actually them trying to bolster me and give me support and to show that they were encouraging, not that was a burden they were laying upon me, because I didn't want to disappoint them because they had put all their hopes into me. And I had to disengage from realizing that their expectations or their hopes for me were not necessarily a burden I had to take on. I didn't have to choose to feel that they were being disappointed. I went to finals in the first coronet I went to finals in 2010, and they were like, oh, I was really hoping you would win. Yes, so was I, actually, oddly enough. But, that's not the way it went. And I had to disengage from their disappointment that I didn't do it. And I also had to figure out whose expectations I was willing to live up to, because I'm very externally motivated. So having to please someone else and to meet somebody's expectation actually helps, because for me, if I say I'm going to do this thing and I don't do it, I can go, okay, well, good enough. But to get past that and to get into that next level, having somebody that I am trying to impress, or I'm trying to meet their expectation, actually helps. So I had to make it my knight, my consort. I had to take a really harsh self-evaluation to say, okay, this is where you are. You are this good. You are not that good. And to be able to push forward. I won Coronet in 2012, and suddenly, that exaltation was way up. Everybody was talking about how fantastic I was. And I had to re-engage the philosophy that I'd had for years: is don't believe your own press. Don't believe what people say bad about you, but don't believe what people say good about you. You need to have an actual self-evaluation that you can go, this is where I am, and I'm okay with that. And that helped a lot. And to not take on their disappointment when I didn't do well, and not take on their greatest hopes for me when that was not my goal personally.
So I was the first female knighted in my kingdom. And during my vigil, about every other person who wasn't congratulating me was laying their expectations at me. And I was asked not to quit the SEA now that I was told, and this was during a time that the SEA was experiencing a lot of campaigns and issues across multiple kingdoms. So a lot of people who came into my vigil were concerned about representation and women being a forward face of the SEA, and they wanted me to go out and roar. And roaring's not my style. I'm quiet, I do my thing. And a lot of their expectations weighed really heavy on me for several months. And it took a little bit to sort through what they wanted for me and what I wanted for me, and for me to realize that I'm a human. I'm still my mom. I'm still a mom. I still have other obligations outside the SEA, and I can't be perfect, but I do want to live up to their expectations of being a good peer, and I will try my best. But when people lay expectations at your feet that are not your own, it is not your responsibility to live up to them, and you have to recognize what you want for yourself and make those your priorities.
Right, so this question is going to be our last question, just because we're starting to run out of time. So how did you deal with identifying as just a fighter, but also acknowledging that as a woman, you have a unique point of view or experience?
I'm not sure I really have thought about the woman experience portion of it, but I did worry for many years about wanting to be just fighter. It was really keen in my mind that I didn't want to be looked at differently on the field. And I remember one time I was fighting in a melee in the woods, and one of the guys hit me. I was at the top of the hill and he hit me pretty hard, and I went rolling down the hill, and everybody around me, all the guys around me, stopped and was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I just got so angry with them, and I looked at them all and I said, "You never ask each other if you're all okay. Why do you always ask me if I'm okay? Can't you just treat me the same?" And they all laughed at me. And then from then on there, they always asked me if I was okay, just to be jerks, because, they're guys. But it was at that point that I realized I can't change what they see of me. I can't be just a fighter in their eyes. All I can do is be the best fighter on the field I can be. And then for a while, I decided I was going to wear pink all the time. So when I did kill them, they would remember they died at the hand of a woman. And so I'm really proud of being a woman, but I really just want to be another fighter on the field, because I want it to be an equal fighting field. I just want to have fun and be treated the same out there as everybody else. I know that other people have experiences because they're a woman, and that they get treated in a different way that is not necessarily in a positive way. And I fortunately have not really had that much experience on that end of the things.
So, when I came into society, I just saw myself as a fighter. It really wasn't until I came off the field after a particularly good bout And this guy says to me, he goes, "Man, you fight just like a guy." And it just struck me as so odd. I was like, "Oh, excuse me?" And I didn't know if I should be complimented or if I should be a little insulted. And so I stepped back from that comment and I said, "Well, okay, that's this gentleman's perspective, and he was surprised. He was surprised when I took off my helmet because I fought like a guy." And so I took it as like, well, I guess my aggression's good. I guess, okay, I'll take that as a positive. But it did open a door for me to self-evaluate and to evaluate the comment itself, right? I was just another fighter until I took off my helmet. And then I was a woman that fought as well as a man. And so I looked at that and said, okay, that's not something I'm going to get my head wrapped around. But it also spoke to something that was a little more systemic in the society itself. And I think if you are a woman that chooses this particular path, you're going to get crazy comments. And none of them, I think 98% of them are crazy comments that are meant in the best of light and the best of heart intentions. Maybe that other percentage is something just snarky. But for the most part, people just want to see you do well. They want to see you progress and you have cheerleaders along the way. But I personally just see myself as just another fighter on the field. I know that there's that perspective that the other perspective. But, for the ladies out there that are traveling this path, focus on yourself, right? Focus on yourself and how you perceive yourself. Are you just another fighter out there, or are you going to get your head wrapped around that axle about, well, I'm a girl fighter, right? And then give yourself excuses to say, well, I didn't do well in that bout because I'm a girl fighter. Okay, you can go either way with that. It comes down to, I think, time and knowledge, and saying I'm like every other fighter because I have the experience, I put in the time, I put in the practice, I put in the knowledge. But yeah, women do have a very unique point of view in the society because I think most of us are, under 6 foot, right? And in the early years, I can speak to that 33-year gap. 33 years ago, it was a challenge to even get a pattern for armor and whatnot. So not to get off topic here, but yeah, it's going to be what you want to make it. You want to see yourself as a female fighter, or do you want to see yourself as just another fighter on the field and put the work and the time in? So.
Sorry. So I have sort of a different perspective. I've had that same comment. You fight like a guy. And that was before I got knighted, and just that never goes away. The tournament that I fought in last fall that I got third out of like 100 people, and it was an interkingdom tournament. I had a very well-respected noted Duke come up to me and go, "Oh, I bet nobody questions why you're a knight." So I learned very early on that the fact that you're a woman fighting well is exceptional. It's going to be exceptional until we fill in Knights Council with like 100, 200, 300 more of us. And you have to accept the fact that people's perception of you is like that. What I joke with Duke Sean when we talk about women issues or gender is that I can't divorce myself from my vagina. So I have accepted that I have a vagina and I'm a good fighter, and that is novel to people. And I've done my best to embrace that and to be open and available to other women who want to learn from me or just want advice or something to have a soundboard off of. and not to be bitter that everybody just thinks that I can teach women. So I've really just sort of embraced it, and I am just very confident in myself that I am a fighter that happens to be a woman.
I think in the last several years that I really embraced that our job as female knights and female chivalry is to normalize that a female fighter is not synonymous with a good fighter, because often it's you fight like a guy is meant as a compliment. And I wanted to express to folks that we are, as the ladies of chivalry, even though we're still a minority, there's 57 of us compared to the 2,000 plus male knights, but just because we're female does not mean that we're not good fighters. And when I was princess, one of the things that I tried to do was that if I wasn't in armor, I was actually in a dress. And for those of you who know me, you know that mostly I dress in male costume simply for the convenience of it. But it was important for me to be that symbol, to show the up and coming ladies that you could be both. You don't have to be just a fighter. You don't have to be a guy in order to be just a fighter. That you can be feminine and embrace your pink and embrace your femininity and still be able to be a good fighter and a threat on that field. That the two are not unconnected. And so I think in the last 20 years that we've seen a lot more of that, that it's not considered, you're not diminished because you are feminine. And I have been very pleased with that. So I hope that our panel here helps to inspire our other sisters and to inspire our brothers so that they can see that this is a possibility, that there are a lot of us actually out there, and that you don't have to be masculine in order to be a good fighter.
Fighter and woman are both labels. And when you think about fighters, there's someone who puts on armor and go out on the field and hit each other. And being a woman doesn't take away or add to that. But as a woman who puts on armor and goes out on the field, I have the opportunity to advise other women on how to deal with issues that come up while fighting, such as having to pump, or dealing with a menstruation issue, or recovering from a C-section. So I don't see one taking away from the other. And I also don't identify as a woman fighter. I'm just both.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for those very thoughtful answers. I think that was good to hear a range of perspectives on that one. So noting the time, we are going to have to wrap up now because we're 12 minutes over. I just wanted to thank again all of our panel knights for giving up your time today. I'm loving this series and I really enjoyed hearing all of your answers. Thank you very much to Vespa for being our producer. You are excellent as always. And thank you to our audience for listening. So next week, our episode 4 is going to be on fighting and family. So we'll release the details for that later this week. Before we go, Vespa, can you tell everyone where they can find this recording?
Yes, they can find this recording on this page. It will remain, but we will be uploading the video for the Women of Chivalry. There is an official group now, and all of the details for YouTube channels and all of that good stuff will be found there. I can link that in the comments on this page for everybody to find it.
Awesome, thanks Vespa. So if you have watched this and you've thought of some extra questions, please post them on that Female Knights Roundtable 2020 Facebook page, and our panel knights will endeavour to write some thoughtful comments. Thanks everyone for your time, and we'll see you next week. Bye.